Hello, keto friends. Happy Sunday evening. This is like my favorite time of the day where I get to talk to you guys. I get to see everybody. I get to talk to Dr. Boz. We have not had, usually we talk throughout the week. Dr. Boz, I miss you. I haven't talked to you all week. Where have you been?
I am hunkering down. I'm trying to write, and that means you got to turn off all the distractions. And I'll tell you, and then I have teenagers home from school. Like, I'm lucky I got a few hours of writing in.
You right?
Yes.
Yes. It's real, right? Like
The idea of children slave labor has become higher on the possibility list. Like, okay, what do you this can't last all summer.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's funny. Well, mine are out from school as of Friday. My 14-year-old, she's gotten a couple of awards, but the one that I'm most proud of is that she is most likely to run a successful business. And I'm like,
Yay!
my little entrepreneur. I love those off awards. They're not like the real awards, but they're like, what would this kid be known for? And I just love that. I love that.
Fantastic. No, and especially in today's world, as you look at, boy, you can send them for a good 200,000 on, education, and then what do they have? I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Wow,
So,
we've got a lot of people tuning in. And
oh yeah,
immediately,
yeah.
I love when I see the same names over and over again. Angela Earnhardt, I see you every time. You are probably the one of our most dedicated fans. Lorraine, Karen, Kathy, Lynette. Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. Hey, Selma, we know Selma. Oh, Selma says send the teenagers to the farm. Hey guys.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what happened to me. Is like Dad would have pick rock, fix fence, go rake hay. That
Yes.
sounds like what summers are supposed to be filled with. I don't have any hay fields. There's no rocks to pick. I'm like, okay, you're not gonna like me if this goes on too long, guys.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about adrenal fatigue. I don't think we've ever covered this subject, but before we get started, I want to just tell you guys who are just tuning in how you can maybe support Dr. Boz and I. So the first way that you could support us is share this information if you find it valuable. If you tune in every week, just hit the little share button so other people can get this information too, because that's our main mission, is to share keto information and make people healthy. The second way is that we're really trying to grow Instagram. So you can follow Dr. Boz on Instagram, and you can also follow keto-friendly recipes on Instagram. Now, Dr. Boz is Dr. Boz _ Annette Bosworth. And then my channel is keto-friendly recipes. So we will put those links in the comments. If you need to go back and click on those links when we're done, that'd be awesome. Right, Dr. Boz?
Absolutely. I didn't plan on being an Instagram follower, so by the time I signed up for one, half the names were taken, and so my handle's really long, but yeah, that's what it is.
It's okay.
My kids make fun of me.
No. I just typed in Dr. Boz and it came right up to you.
Oh, did it?
So,
oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's no problem. People will find you. Not a problem. Chrissy says, I have Addison's disease, so this is going to be interesting. And she's from Massachusetts. Welcome, Chrissy. Glad you're here.
So let's I just clicked on making sure I can see the comments again, because that's really helpful for me when it comes to these types of conversations. So what I was hoping we could start with was anybody who's had the words adrenal fatigue and who told them that. When I have a patient come in saying, I want a workup for adrenal fatigue, my first part is to say, where did you come from? Where did you come up with that language? And where is that, what are the symptoms that you're coming to the clinic with? When most of my patients come into the clinic and they say, Dr. Boz, I think I have adrenal fatigue. What I usually find is they've been suffering, they've been tired, they are not finding the health that they want, and either they've been reading women's magazines, because that word is very common in women's magazines, or they've gone to a practitioner who, with all the good intentions, has used a term that doesn't really have a diagnosis inside the medical world. So it becomes this clash of language, and the patient can sometimes get caught in the middle of what does that really mean to me and what am I going to do about it? So let's just remind you or ask you, Jennifer, what do you think your adrenal glands do?
I hope they probably protect me from that flight or fight mode.
Hmm.
And mine tend to always be in the fight mode. So they get worn out.
Yeah, yeah, adrenaline. That's where we get that word. The
Yeah.
adrenaline gland is part of the adrenal gland.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to remember a test question on about the adrenal glands and the anatomy is they're organs of hormones, and the hormones get sweeter as you go in. So I think of it as salt, sugar, and sex are the three hormones
Yeah.
that are inside your adrenal glands. So the way you control your blood pressure is actually from part of the hormones that are on the outer layer. That talks a lot to your kidneys. Adrenal it has the word renal in it, and it means that it's right next to your renal, which is your kidneys. But that hormone of keeping your blood pressure controlled is one of the hormones from your adrenal gland. Sugar is the next one, which is actually called, so you've got aldosterone, you've got cortisol, and people have heard of that hormone. We've talked about that one, a very stress hormone. And then you've got some of your reproductive hormones that come out of the most central part of your adrenal glands.
So that's why you call it the salt, sugar, sex.
Sex.
It's like
Yep.
the 3S.
Yes.
Let's just call it what it is.
Yes, and those hormones are in layers in this very delicate and really, in I can remember in gross anatomy, the adrenals were just this very little bitty tiny, like all this stuff can't come out of such a tiny little part, can it? But it is again one of those hormones where one of those organs where the hormones leave, and then it does all this work. And when it's not working right, lots of bad things happens. They stand up, they get lightheaded. So they're known for being like just I think of them as weak. They feel a weakness. And what I think of when I'm looking at an adrenal especially, it's almost always the patient will come in and saying, I think I have adrenal fatigue. Can you do a workup? Can you fix me? And, today I would do something much different than I did probably 5 years ago before I really implemented the process of the ketogenic diet. What I used to start with was actually they come in, they're overly stressed. If you could do a cortisol measurement over the 24 hours, which is expensive and a waste of time. But if you could do that, they would be making way too much cortisol. They're in a constant stressed out mode. And what does that cortisol do? But raises your blood sugar. And so then they've got this pre-diabetes or the constant need for glucose that they're chasing. And then they'll usually keep reading that their sex drive is low. They just that's the last thing I want to talk about. That I don't care at all about that. I'm so tired. I just can't seem to get my energy. And yet they have all the markers of high stress. And so today, 5 years ago, my first step was remember that sleep protocol that we talk about with John? I would instantly march back and say, you know what we can do with a few nights of really hearty sleep is we can reset your body's panic mode that's constantly producing the cortisol. They're usually not sleeping well. From depression to anxiety to worries to memory issues, they're usually struggling with some form of that, whether or not they recognize some memory problems or not. But that kind of mental health is fragile. Like they're not resilient. They can't cope. They're just at the edge. And then what happens after they do a little sleep protocol is there are a lot of things that get better. And so people say, well, can't you just check a blood test? And I'm like, if I were to do this today, when they come in today, and I rarely get this anymore because I don't know if the word is out that if you say adrenal fatigue, I'm going to make you sleep for 3 days. So maybe they don't say that anymore.
You know what though? If you say that to some of the moms I know, they'd be like, hallelujah, let me sleep for 3 days. Somebody else take the reins.
Yeah. In fact, I have a protocol I've used a few times where it is that mom that's just, she's overstressed. And I will say, we're going to do your protocol. You're going to go to the hotel room and it's across the street from where you live. But this is the timeout that I need to give you a reset that if we're going to really fix things, there's a whole bunch of layers that need to improve, but you're going to do a lot better with a few nights of really good sleep. So there's the beginning that says, can I do a blood test? But what I do now is I would have them check their morning glucoses, their morning ketones, and just show them how volatile their blood glucoses are. It
So
becomes this battle of saying, no, 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 I see so much when you walk through and I know these symptoms.
yeah,
But
let me just stress the importance of what you're saying, because sometimes I don't think people understand that they have the power. Instead of visiting you in your office, paying a copay, like they have so much power in their own hands that if you can just get yourself a glucose monitor and do what Dr. Boz is telling you, take your ketone levels, take your glucose levels, and by those numbers, you can change your makeup. You can change what's happening, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful, like the empowerment is so far beyond what what I would have hoped to be doing at this stage of my career. Like as you get into 20 years of practicing patients, patients come in with adrenal fatigue, and all I would see is, okay, we might be better in 6 months. And if they get a support group, they get a husband that's the kids, all this stuff has to line up for them to really improve their health.
You
And
guys, let me tell you, when Dr. Boz and I started working together and she told me, oh yeah, get one of these machines and poke your finger. I was like, lady, you're crazy. I don't do needles. I don't want to do this. But the more and more I work with Dr. Boz, she really does want you to be the driver in your own health. And one of the ways you will get, if you're new at keto and you're just learning the food, like don't even listen to this. But when you get to that next level and you want to understand and you want to be healthy, you will realize that the glucose in your system, when that is high, it causes so much disease. It causes so much trouble. And this is where you have the power to know what's happening in your system. So she talks about the glucose ketone ratio all the time, and she has a way where she you take. Do you only do it in the morning? Because I do it all the time.
yeah,
Like, what do you
you
suggest?
can do it anytime, but if you're stingy with your strips, the most power, and that's real because they're expensive. And at first they're curious, but then you're like, dang, I'm paying money again.
Yeah,
So
no, for real. Yeah.
So the most information is that first one in the morning. That's where I get the most information. Yeah.
So she, when we started working together, she's like, look, I need to know what's happening. Like I'm not there with her and I'm not there in her office. So the best way for me to kind of tell her, besides maybe a couple of other blood tests for specific things, the number one thing she wanted to know is what's your glucose and what's your ketone number. And we always talk about that ratio. So what you do is you take that morning number and you figure out what your ketone is and your glucose, and you divide that number. You take your glucose number first, you divide it by your ketone, and you get a percentage, you get a ratio. But Dr. Boz, it's very important that when you do these ratios, she has created a percentage way for you to know exactly where you are. If your ratio percentage comes out to 80% or less, you're in weight loss zone. If it's over 80, you really need to look at the foods you're consuming because something is messing you up. And if you're under 40%, you're in a pretty good immune boosting state, probably some autophagy. And if you're in 20% or less, like I call you a total rock star because that is really hard to do.
Yeah, that's
cancer fighting. Yeah. So I've learned a lot just by you having me test my own. And I feel like I have been empowered to know, like, I don't have to call you all the time. We don't have to talk about this number and that number. I know. And this way of doing it, you guys can know this too. Without going to a doctor, you can know what's happening. So I love that. I just had to explain that again because we've got so many new people on here.
Well, there's a comment by Gloria Gross, which is it helps me bring back the adrenal fatigue because she says that I was diagnosed by my licensed practitioner with adrenal fatigue, and my primary care doctor said, go learn about the ketogenic diet. And so I really think it's what you hear me hesitate by saying the words adrenal fatigue because it is a process or a syndrome that is common in the women's magazines. It's common in the in the practitioners that are in the relations of patients. But when you get to the can I do a blood test to prove this, you're going to hear some pushback. And it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that the label is different in my world versus your world. And I don't care what the label is. The patient is suffering usually. They are fatigued, that they know that their blood pressure goes up and down, that they do not have good energy. Almost always when I would do sleep studies on them, their brains would not sink into that heavy layer of sleep where it repairs. And then in addition, now that I've become an advocate of even just the glucose checks, but also that time where you did that 2 weeks of a continuous glucose monitor, just giving a patient a prescription for that, saying, I know you don't want to poke your finger, but give me 2 weeks of your phone measuring your sugar. You're going to be amazed at how high that sugar gets at different stages in the day, when you get upset, when you don't sleep well, and when you don't have the barrier of poking your finger, especially when you're new to this. It is enlightening how much they learn about their own system. And, Gloria's right that when the amount of heaviness that I would feel when a patient comes in with adrenal fatigue, it was related to the fact that it's going to be 6 months before they feel better. And that's if a lot of things go right.
Yeah.
Until I got the ketogenic diet. And I am telling you, one of my favorite tricks when they're really exhausted and they don't have the privilege of 3 days of a, timeout sleep process that I would love for them to do.
Yeah.
I will tell them, don't wiggle one little spot, get some exogenous ketones, put them in your system, and watch what happens over 2 weeks. Don't change anything about what you're to do. We're going to get you a continuous glucose monitor, and I'm going to put these ketones in your supplements. And it is amazing what happens in that 2-week process. I can take them from adrenal fatigue to maybe not perfect, but so much better in under 3 to 4 weeks by saying, I'm going to wake up your mitochondria. That sounds like a fancy word, but it's really important for your focus, your immune system, your energy, and your sex hormones. That's the sweetest hormone in the middle of those adrenal glands. They are related to a healthy person does have sex drive. They are interested in their 10 years of marriage doesn't mean, no, we don't have sex. It's real. Their hormones are healthy. And I'm profoundly impressed and almost saddened that the years it took me to say, I could have done so much better if I would have started with diet instead of starting with so many blood tests and prescriptions. And yeah. But
so I know that you say take exogenous ketones, and that does wake up. That gives you an instant boost. I will give a little warning though. If you're not used to taking them, start off slow, because they can really upset your stomach. Dr. Boz and I don't advocate for supplements right off the bat. This is if you need something, if you are fighting with adrenal fatigue and you need something, this is a supplement. Now, Dr. Boz, are there any other supplements besides exogenous ketones that you recommend?
Well, when it comes to like the strategy that I'll look at, what I like when they first come in is to measure some things, like, is their thyroid abnormal? Are they anemic? Some of the basic things that it's so common, especially if it's a woman who's had a couple of babies and they are exhausted. There are some good things that you can check to see that. So those would drive some of the supplements. I've been overly impressed with the number of people who come in with adrenal fatigue and their vitamin D is it's less than 30. It's sometimes in the low 20s. And again, that's a fat-based hormone that does get better on the ketogenic diet, but you're going to be months before you get it better. So I really look at supplementing that if it's low as well. And again, you look at some of these markers, and we've talked about some of them before, like what is their average blood sugar? Do they have a thyroid problem? Are they anemic? Do they have a low vitamin D? And all of these are the blood tests that kind of create this constellation of the patient their body is wilted from pushing too hard, not having a good balance in life. And oh, by the way, they're eating way too many processed carbohydrates.
And that is what you just explained was exactly me. I was anemic. I had very low vitamin D. I had everything that you just said was exactly me. But what was amazing is the only thing I switched was my diet. I just went keto. I was taking vitamin D, but switching keto, it's like my blood work transformed within a little as 6 months. It was
It's amazing. Yeah.
amazing,
Mhm.
amazing how it switches.
Right, faster than I could do with a prescription,
I
and I
know.
think that's where when people say, "What are your supplements?" That I bring out this exogenous ketone stuff only because people say, "Oh, I can't do keto, it's too hard," and really their brain can be they aren't in the place they wanna change all this stuff. That sounds ridiculous that they're gonna go through something that doesn't feel good for a few days when they go from high carbohydrates to not, and that process of saying, "The faster we can get you feeling better," and then these supplements are not the exogenous ketones are not something I have people on for long term. I want them doing a 2-week challenge, waking up their mitochondria, and then it's amazing because they don't need it. They really don't need the supplement once they get that transition, um, and figuring out the food. So,
Yeah.
get the cookbook.
Yeah, let me
Yes.
let me answer this real quick because Kathy's asking which exogenous ketones do you recommend? There's a couple that I prefer, but we did. Dr. Boz created her own exogenous ketones that has remind me, it has magnesium in it because
Yep.
we're very magnesium deficient. So we've put the link just in the comments. If you want ones that she created. Hold on, there was another. Let's see. Selma says age usually dictates what the hormone problems. Here it is. Gloria Gross says, would MCT oil be good in this regard?
Yeah, it's another great supplement. So when you look at the difference between the exogenous ketones and MCT, so exogenous ketones, I think of it as the easiest way to get into ketosis. You kind of let the supplement do all the work. It can give you diarrhea if you have it too much. So I tell them, you can see if you're checking your blood glucose or blood ketones that it is present within 5 minutes of taking some of those supplements.
Yeah.
But you want to sip on that all day long. That's only going to last you a couple of hours. I mean, 2 to 3 hours is about what most supplements last. It really has to do with how fast you can burn the fuel.
So when you say sip on that, are you saying to take one little dose and don't just like gulp it, just like take little bits throughout the day? Because that stuff is really nasty. I mean, it's gross. It's like really gross. So you're telling me to sip on something so nasty all throughout the day, but are you saying it's because it boosts little bits of ketone and when you shove it all down, it'll make your ketones go like 10?
Well, you can make, even with a couple of sips, you can still see the ketones really spike up. The problem is if what you're trying to do is expose that circulation to this molecule that you can see the supplement will increase the supply chain of this fuel that comes when they give up the carbs and they increase the fat, but they have to go through that keto flu to get there. So one of the things that I've just said, especially when they're in a slump, they come in with adrenal fatigue. I mean, that word encompasses this woman who's not well, saying, all right, I don't want you on supplements for the rest of your life, but from getting you from here to there, starting with something you can sip on a little bit all day long. I highly encourage you putting it with a fat, like a heavy whipping cream. My kids do that as they sip on it in between classes at school. And so they'll go into their locker and have a little drink in between. And the reason you do that is it doesn't last very long. You drink this ketone in a can and it's out of your system in a couple hours. So then the next layer though is an MCT. So MCTs are this very special fat that you do not need pancreatic enzymes to absorb. You do not need bile acids to absorb. I mean, you actually do not digest these fats. You absorb them. They kind of happen without going into the full process that most of our fats do. So they're very specialized. And when they hop right over into your liver, now you make the ketones. So unlike ketones in a can where you kind of eat the supplement and it does all the work for you, these fats are special absorbed. So you can see them within your circulation within about 30 minutes, and they last for up to 4 to 5 hours. But much like that ketones in a can, I tell folks you kind of got to start by licking the spoon.
Yeah.
These fats are very unique and your body is usually not used to them. So if you take a swig, you're going to be a friendship with the toilet.
Yeah, tread lightly. Like
Right.
it is not. And just so you know, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing the keto diet for a while. And there's just a handful of times that I feel like I needed something to help me. But don't feel like you absolutely have to have it unless you're dealing with something like adrenal fatigue.
Yeah. I mean, the other place that I've really found it is that people in adrenal fatigue tend to have depression. They might not identify with that word, but their brain is working slower, processing, their mood is low. If I could measure their serotonin, I would guess it's much lower than it should be. And so, again, we're asking them to do something hard and be very disciplined about temptations of carbs, which are everywhere, and their brain's just not working so well. So I think of it, when your brain's in a slump, just let a supplement help you. And it's not forever, but man, I've seen from depression to dementia improve with, and then get on their own way where they don't need it forever. But that transition can be super helpful for them.
Yeah, for sure. So Elva says A1C is 4.5, but glucose runs 100 fasting. What do I do?
I was looking at that comment too. It's funny you mentioned it, because I was trying to see about what age group is she in. And I'm going to guess just by looking that she's over 40. So you take that woman that's over 40, and there are some rules. They can have their glucose controlled, meaning they haven't seen it rise up to like a 4.5 A1C is pretty good. That's a really good number. But the morning fasting sugars of 100 say you're on the edge, you're on a tipping point. Be careful. You are at a perfect time to make a change and not have the consequences that come at the next layer. So what that means is your body churns cortisol. This is one of those adrenal hormones, and it makes too much. Specifically, it makes it from 5 o'clock in the morning till about 5 o'clock at night. And if you eat, it adds those. So if you happen to eat outside of the 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. zone, now you're making even more fattening foods, more fattening hormones, which is going to raise those sugars throughout the day. And even though you have a good A1C right now, the morning fasting sugar of 100 says, beware, you need to put a timeout zone from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And you may not be able to start there. So I think what I did with Jennifer was saying, let's just start by not eating after 7. Yeah. And then it was, now let's try to back it down to 6:30. That if you get home after 6:30, this is called a fast. You'll be fine. You're going to wake up tomorrow morning and have what you need to eat, but you start with little bitty steps. Yeah. And that cleans up this habit of, you are a woman over 40 and you are on those two numbers alone teach me you're on the precipice of a change that is not healthy. So back away from it. And the answer is time restricted eating, of eat during the sunlight hours, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and not after that.
Yeah, the best way that I remember that so easily is that, because I am definitely over 40, and our hormones are most active in the morning. So you want to eat your most food when you're working, and they really slow down. I found that mine slow down after 4. So if I can do really good to stop eating when my hormones are slower, I know from tracking my own journey, it does better for my body. And this is where I always advocate for people to track what they do, because you can find out what's going to work and what doesn't, right?
Yeah, I mean that you don't think about that, where your body didn't ask you permission to change these hormones. It just kind of does it, kind of like saggy breasts. Like, come on, this is not the time for this. I've been depending on you for years, and you're gone. But now it's like, okay, I'm here. So those hormones, you have to follow this new set of rules, and that's why I do preface that if they're under 40, if they've struggled with their weight, you can see that their cortisol could be higher during those 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. But most women, even with a little extra weight, they've controlled the sugars, and their cortisol, it changes after 40, gals. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, it sucks. So Shirley White Peterson says, it raises my blood pressure. She's talking about exogenous ketones.
Right. Let's talk about that. So exogenous ketones, they've been around since the 50s, and they have, as Jennifer says, they are nasty tasting because they're a salt. So one of the ways to improve that taste is the sugar substitutes that go into almost all of the supplements. It does improve the taste. It still can spike sugars in some people. So it's something that if you're using this as a transition, using it for somebody who's in that kind of ditch to get them to keto, watching blood pressure is a good idea, but remember, you're adding a salt to their body. So as much as we talk about salts are really important on the ketogenic diet, once they've been in ketosis a while and they've flushed out a lot of that extra fluid, we talk about supplementing salt, kind of the opposite of what we've told patients for 30 years, maybe longer than that. But when you add the salt before you make the transition, you can see their blood pressure rise. So this is one of those places where if it was the perfect world and I got to coach every patient through this transition, I would tell them, as long as you don't have a high blood pressure problem, but I've even found with people with high blood pressure, the transition to getting them feeling better was so much more rapid when we used the help of the supplement. The other thing that I will caution patients is when the blood pressure goes up, keep an eye on it. People don't die of a stroke from blood pressure that's high for a minute or 10 minutes. They don't die of blood pressure high for a day. They die of blood pressure that's been high for 6 months. So in this transition where you say you are going to be losing weight, you are headed in the right direction. And yeah, we saw the blood pressure go up when they added salt in the form of exogenous ketones. It gives you the motivation to make sure you get to the other side of that plan.
Yeah. So since we are talking about exogenous ketones, Linda says, I take supplements in the evening. Will this affect my glucose? Should I take them at 5 p.m.? So is she talking about the exogenous ketones? Like, when should you take those?
So exogenous ketones, it is a fuel. So people say, how many calories are in a ketone? I'm like, well, that's an interesting question. About 4 kilocalories per unit of ketone that they were raising. And I got that by getting deep into some literature. So don't make me repeat where I got it from, because I couldn't tell you right now. But it was one of those mind shifting things where you get to measuring ketones and you realize, oh, this is low carb. And then you say, I can put those ketones in my body and I can get this good Dr. Boz ratio. But remember, it's a fuel. So again, my kids sip on it throughout the day, especially if they're doing things like, I don't know, a debate tournament or a wrestling tournament where their body and brain needed fuel. So having it right before you go to bed is kind of like giving yourself fuel to sleep. I wouldn't do that. It is to help you transition. The more exposure your blood that has ketones in it, especially the blood-brain barrier has, the easier it is to get through that slump that happens in the first week or so of keto. In fact, that's what the supplement's supposed to be helping with, is you present that ketone to your blood-brain barrier, and now you don't have the keto flu of that down feeling. You may still have some cravings for carbs, but boy, much easier. So I wouldn't do it at night, is what I guess the answer is.
Yeah. So Debbie says, I take 1 teaspoon of MCT oil 3 times a day. Is that okay? Wow, that's a lot, because I cannot take that much without having without having stress on my stomach. Like, I cannot take that much.
Well, yeah, even today I had the kids they have a cooker they were playing with, so they roasted a pineapple, and I had a bite of it and thought, okay, this is going to trigger a craving, and today's when I start fasting. So I said, I'm going to make a little ketone shake, and I put ice and cream with mine. And it's probably been, I don't know, 3 weeks since I've done that, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. The last time I had something that I shouldn't have had and said, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to have cravings. And then I knew I had this part of the day where I concentrate and I need all things firing. I can't afford to be running off of sugar during this. So, but I'll tell you, I only have just a tiny little bit, and my ketones will go up and they'll last a couple hours, and then I don't, I'll head into my fast. But I think I did that at 10 o'clock this morning. So, yeah, that was their breakfast. Roasted pineapple.
Wow.
So they thought it was great.
Also, this adrenal fatigue talk has led into a lot of exogenous ketone talks. I tell you, there are a lot of supplements on the market, and there's a lot that are marked up really expensive because people sell them. I've tried yours. I've tried Perfect Keto chocolate. I'm kind of a chocolate fan. I'm not a fan of any exogenous ketones because they're all gross. There's levels of gross for me. If I have to take them, I will travel with them. If I find that I'm weak or I need something to hold me off, because I know I'm not going to be at a place where I can eat what I want, I might pack some.
Well, I
But
think it's different too. Your metabolism is so much stronger than a lot of the people that are watching. When you first start out there, you don't get the benefits that you now enjoy. And that threshold of improving your metabolism over the last 6 to 9 months is best exampled when you watched what happened to your ketones even days after that 36-hour fast you did. So you had done the first a couple 2 3 fasts, and then even a few days later your ketones were still producing, your body was still producing a higher level of ketones. And I think it is rare that you and I would do this. We're at a different stage of the diet, of the transition. And the best part about a fast, it is actually the best way to improve those ketones. If I could take an adrenal fatigue patient and say, hey, let me lock you up in a hospital room and tell you exactly the best way to do this, it would be to put them on a 14-day fast of salt and water. But they would hate me. I would need to use some IV supplements of things they were low on, like iron and maybe some B12, some other kind of vitamins that they are probably malnourished on. And I could get their body doing great, but it would cost a ton of money. They would have to take a complete time out from their life. And would I really have empowered them to improve their own health? No, I would have got them addicted to me. And now they're going to say, oh, the only way you could fix this is go to a hospital and spend 50 grand on how to reset your system. No, 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 no.
yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer holds this beautiful tool in her back pocket now that she says in the times when she's not doing well, or just says she wants to improve her metabolism, have a highly focused 3 or 4 days, she could fast, and it will increase her ketones better and longer than those supplements will. But that's a tool that you get into as you get healthier.
And I'm still not very good at it. So I don't want people, I think people watch this show, and let me just tell you, I'm a real person. I struggle so bad with fasting. Some people, it comes so easy for you. And I envy that because I want that to be so easy. But for me, it's just, I still have it ingrained that I'm hypoglycemic, that I need to eat every 2 hours or I'm going to die, or I'm going to pass. I've passed out before from not eating, from low sugar. So it's such a scary thing. And it is something I struggle with. So, hey, we've got a lot of talk about fruits. I think your pineapple talk. Hey, guys, no, she's not advocating to take pineapple.
No,
She's
my kids were playing with a cooker, and I was trying to be mom and taste their mess.
Yeah,
it was
no,
sweet.
we don't eat pineapple. If you go off plan, that's what it looks like. No, we very, very few berries are eaten. We do strawberries and maybe blueberries in this house, sometimes raspberries, but that's about the fruit that we eat.
Yeah, I had a list. I was seeing somebody else the other day was saying what makes your list after several months. And boy, at the beginning, I was definitely about sugar substitutes were how I got through my cravings. And I was a big frozen cherry, which is not my favorite anymore. That had a lot of sugars in it. When I tested, it was terrible. Blackberries are what might make it, but I'll be honest, it's probably been 3 months since I've had a blackberry. When I look at what's safe, like the pineapple was a mess. That was the kind of kid being a mom. But the blackberries are something where I say, oh, I could probably have that, except I don't anymore. Like it doesn't even come across as something I want, really.
Oh, I have got to. Renee has a really good question. And I remember I asked this to Dr. Boz, and I felt bad for even asking this question because it's a supplement called ashwagandha.
Yes.
And oh my God, I remember when I was on the phone with Dr. Boz and she's like, those are not regulated. I think we were talking about having it for hormones or boosting hormones or something. And I said, I heard about this ashwagandha. I want to take it. And she's like, they're not regulated. There's no proof. You don't even know where it comes from. Like, I don't ever want to ask her about ashwagandha. I don't even know if I'm saying it right.
No. Yeah. So the problem with the supplements, and this is where you do have some companies out there with some integrity, but even in the best of those, the ability to regulate what is in ashwagandha and how well it's produced, they're usually doing their own tests. I've even had a couple of legal cases where you go watch what happens with, they got called that this wasn't, it wasn't what they said it was. And they said, but we have these third party people who were paid to tell you that what's really in it. And the third party people, they said, well, who does your paycheck come from? And it was from the people who were getting the supplement, of course, there was so much conflict of interest. I mean, here's a great example, because I get this one a lot too, about if you're going to have fatigue, if you've got, low energy, if you've got a brain that's not working right, it doesn't take long for somebody to mention CBD oil. And I was just at a teaching for the military, and they took 24 samples of CBD oil from across the Midwest, and they sent them to the federal government, the FDA, the people who regulate the drugs I write for a prescription. And all 24 of them had THC in it, the active ingredient in marijuana. And so you say, but they were reputable companies. And I'm like, this is exactly the point of how dangerous it is to say, I want to do something natural and I don't want to go to the doctor to get the prescription. And I'm like, here's the deal. That was a great idea about 100 years ago. But there are some certain, if you're looking for things like, what is your motivation for taking ashwagandha? And let me tell you how you can find something that's regulated and proven to be what's in the capsule. I mean, the other famous story I talk about is that 3 or 4 years ago, there was a class action lawsuit against a magnesium supplement of the most common brand. And on the brand of the magnesium, it said, it doesn't make your stomach rumble, because if you take too much magnesium, I can prescribe that and you can have a colonoscopy the next day, right? So this one was very proud of how it doesn't upset your stomach. It doesn't make you have tummy rumbles. And there was 0 magnesium in the #1 magnesium supplement. And I'm just like, this is so frustrating.
Oh my gosh.
So,
wow. Well,
anyway.
that just goes to show you that you really can't trust stuff like that. And you
Yeah.
don't know it. And maybe you can, but how do you know, right? So
Right.
just reading over all the comments, it seems like you've helped a lot of people already, just as to when they're taking their MCT oil or when they're taking their fuels, because it looks like a lot of people were doing it at night, and that's probably not helping with their sleep.
Right.
So that's really good.
There is a question by Terry who says, can you explain and comment on visceral fat?
Okay.
So there is this process of, again, when people come in with adrenal fatigue, they are usually heavier. They've had a weight problem. That comes from this cortisol, which is one of those hormones in the adrenal gland that has been high, or it's unregulated. It bops up and down. It's not a team player anymore. It's kind of off doing its own thing. And the visceral fat, which is fat around our organs, in our body, in our heart, not really the man that you can see across the street that's got the big tummy. He looks pregnant. That's not visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that laces around our organs and is highly connected to heart attacks, to the fat that causes death. One of the best ways that you can lose visceral fat is to keep ketones, keep a Dr. Boz ratio of 80 or lower. So again, the production of ketones helps you tapping into the visceral fat first. So when they say, but doc, it looks like that's the hardest to go, I can't seem to make my visceral fat go away. I want to make sure you're talking about the same fat I'm talking about, which is the stuff you don't pat on your tummy. It's the stuff that's lacing in around your organs, and it is the most dangerous fat in our body. But it is the first to be emptied when on a ketogenic diet. And they have shown this on DEXA scans, but also on several of the studies where you look at what fat was lost on a ketogenic diet versus not a ketogenic diet. And I'm very pleased to tell you that it is the visceral, the most dangerous fat that is lost on a ketogenic diet first.
Nice. Okay, so Dr. Boz and I usually try really hard to go through a lot of the questions to figure out what our next talk is. We like to really research ahead of time, figure out questions and answers, and sometimes have slides for very difficult sciencey talk. So if you could let us know what you're struggling with, what topics you would like us to tackle. Also, if you're in the Facebook group, Low Carb Inspirations Plus Keto Friendly Recipes, you already know that we have a post going there. And I've already taken a lot of your comments from there, and we are prioritizing them as to how many people want that same information. So if you're in the group and you saw that comment and you really want a subject, hit like on that subject talk. And I bet you the one that has the most likes we'll put up next, because we really do. We try and tailor these talks to you and the information that you need. Do we have any more questions?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of them in there, but I don't know that we're going to get to all of them.
I know we only have about 13 minutes
Oh,
left.
we do have a little more time then. So
Well,
there was a couple of them where I was trying to click and see can you heal 21 that was what made me cringe. I was watching my facial expressions on the playback just like, oh, 21 years of the night shift, and I keep thinking, so I do this I do this brains of addiction workshop. You might need to come to that. And what I'm talking about is brains are why I got interested in the ketogenic diet. I healing a brain. So the adrenal fatigue patient is not unfamiliar to me in my clinic. They are often have very wilted brains. But I'll tell you, our brains were designed to sleep during the dark hours and be awake during the light hours. And we are the first major generation to stay awake routinely, uh, especially a population like somebody who's been doing it for 21 years. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Stop now. And then have good ketones, like get your ratio 40 or less, because that's where you can be confident that your brain is getting repaired.
for sure. Hey, can you tell everybody, I know we have a lot of people on, so I want you to tell people about the book that you wrote.
Oh yes. I
Called
actually I was gonna pull up yours because she's not very good at bragging about herself, but she has done amazing. Like
Oh, thank you.
I've had a couple of patients say, I walked past the book in Sam's Club and the stock up on the table was low, so I reached down and restocked it for her. I said, good job. And it is. I told my kids that part of this was not the recipe they were working on this morning, but part of their job is to say, you can take any recipe out of this book and make it for supper. That's one of the rules for being home this summer. So great. I've been reading more about how to use some of the advanced cooking lessons that seem advanced to me, but you need to brag on yourself that's amazing what it's done. What are you, number 5 in the country for
So,
cookbooks?
this is all so new to me doing a cookbook, but apparently there's some ranking system and they rank categories all in one. So out of all the cookbooks, I've been in the top 10 for the last 3 weeks. And I'm just like, how is that possible? I love to cook and I'm just a mom here in my kitchen and just whatever. And I'm saying that as I'm looking at yumminess that I just made. Like I made pretzels. If you're on my email list, they're keto friendly. They're totally keto friendly. So I'm looking at what I made today. I'm going to write up that recipe because I have perfected a chewy pretzel recipe, which I'm so happy about. But anyway, yeah, this is all so new and so exciting. I went to an Amazon bookstore at the Domain in Austin today, and the book was there, and they're like, sign them, please. And I was like, oh, so neat.
That's
it's
super
so
cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. No, it's a big deal. That is just amazing to watch how that has transcended, and that you deserve all the success. That's just great. Your work here, your work at educating people, and really making a cookbook that's easy to use. That's what the best part is that it is functional. So good job.
Yes, it is totally functional. But let me tell you, we make a perfect team because without the science, I would be like, how do I explain that? Like, that's not happening. Like, I can tell you in very layman's terms what to do, what not to do. And that's why I liked your book. I've read it multiple times. Actually, I go back to different sections. It's titled Any Way You Can by Dr. Annette Bosworth. Yeah, there it is. Shown the cover. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it Kindle. You can get it printed. But let me tell you, when you get it, you're going to buy a couple more copies because you're going to want to give it to your friends. It tells a story of how she helped her mom battle cancer using the ketogenic diet. But here's the best part. It helps you because she explains every step of the process, why things happen and what they can do to help you. I think my husband's favorite part of the book was when you were talking about human growth hormone, HGH, because there's a very natural way for you to do that. I think it's chapter 19 or 20. Like we've looked back at that a couple times. I've even heard it in the car. I have the audio book. I have the Kindle book. Like, yeah. So
it is a blessing. I did not plan on writing a book. These were lessons that I was writing for my mom to teach her how to do this. And, that's Oh, that's so cool. Read it 4 times. That's so cool. I'm just, again, helping patients in a way that when you never meet them, that that's the grace of God. So I'm so thankful. Mm.
Yes, it's
But
amazing.
yeah,
Awesome.
I have taken time to read the comments. So if you've bought the book, Amazon lets you leave a review, and not only for my book, but Jennifer's book as well. If you leave a review, I had no idea how powerful this was until I wrote a book, and then
Yeah.
I feel badly for all the books that I've read, loved, and recommended quietly instead of putting a review on Amazon. Like,
I never knew how important reviews were.
mm-mm.
And I am so grateful that you and I have amazing reviews. And for those of you who purchased the review, you get like a verified purchased, like a label, and your review really does
Matters. It
matter.
totally matters.
Yeah,
Like, there's an algorithm that says I can have the world's the most amazing publisher, but if the reviews aren't there, you don't get talked about on Amazon. So
exactly.
it's a
Yes.
really big deal.
Yeah. So if you could step over to Amazon and leave the review you want,
Yes.
and click those ones. If you found a review that was helpful, tell us that it was
Yeah,
helpful, because
absolutely.
it's amazing how much Amazon relies on that. And since I've learned that, I've gone back to
I know.
products that I've liked, and I've made sure, because I buy from companies all the time, and some of these companies are small businesses. So I make sure now to leave a review.
No idea.
All
Like,
the stuff I buy.
big deal.
Yeah, it
Yes.
is. Yeah. All right. Well, just a little roundup. Don't forget to go over to Instagram, follow Dr. Boz, follow Keto Friendly Recipes on Instagram. Any way you can, book the Keto Friendly Recipes book. We are here for you. We love helping you. We love sharing information about the ketogenic way of life. It is something that we both do religiously, and we lead many people on it, and we're happy to lead you on this. So thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next weekend. I will be probably live from the Texas coast.
Oh,
So
cool.
let's hope I have connection.
Yeah, I have to think. I have to visit a friend next week too. So I'm wondering when my flight is. I'll have to talk to you about off. I think
Okay. Well, states.
yeah.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Okay, so maybe we won't be having a live next week.
Yes.
We will be sure to put that on this page if we do. Stay tuned. Good
bet.
night, everybody.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.